Hello everyone, I am the Comics Kid 2099. I know it's been a little while, but I am back with a review of an episode of the 2002 television series Firefly. Today I will be talking about the episode titled Our Mrs. Reynolds. This episode begins with the crew of Serenity on some backwoods world saving a small town from a group of bandits who periodically harass the town's people. They easily dispense with the criminals, and then a party is thrown that night where the town people thanks the crew of the ship before they leave the next morning. I should quickly say that I've probably seen this episode at least 4 times, and only now has it occurred to me that seemingly the crew of Serenity is doing all of this for free. We shouldn't forget that the main characters of this show are basically mercenaries, although they are still morally decent people for the most part. Every time the show runs the risk of the unethical nature of what these guys do becoming apparent, they throw in someone who is worse so that we always root for the main characters. But the main guy in charge of this town that our guys save, he seems to be indicating that they have no way of paying for what Mal has done, and Mal seems not to mind. Granted, that scenario gets changed shortly into the episode, but it is interesting that Mal, out of the goodness of his heart, saved these people, as he isn't really the kind of person to pull a freebie like this. Anyhow, after they take off, Mal finds a woman who has stowed away on the ship, who claims that she is Mal's wife. Everyone on the ship has varied reactions to this, mostly having a good laugh at Mal's expense, although everyone seems to think that Mal is a jerk for not wanting to go through with a marriage that he did not consent to. And yeah, Mal could certainly learn some tact, but I tend to side with him through most of this episode. Also, Saffron's presence on the ship has seemingly put a strain on a few relationships. Specifically, Zoe now seems to think that Wash is a pig for reasons I don't entirely understand, and Inara is likewise very mean and nasty to Mal, which, as Mal points out, he's not entirely clear on if she's mad that he got married, or that he intends to drop her off first chance he gets. Things get more interesting when we see that Saffron is not who she seems to be, and she takes out Mal and Wash through various methods. We soon find out that she is sending Serenity into a large net that will kill everyone on board and leave the ship for scavengers who will pick it apart for pieces. Thanks to some quick thinking from several of the people on board, they get out of this sticky wicket, and the day is once again saved thanks to the Powerpuff Girls. This is easily the funniest episode of the series so far. Some of the other episodes are good, but I don't think any of them have as much hilarity all packed into a 40-ish minute space of time as this one does. We get fantastic lines from Jane, Mal, and Book, who probably steals the show in this episode with just a few key scenes. The only one who kinda doesn't work for me is Wash, oddly enough. Usually, he has some great lines, but in this episode, I didn't think his lines quite measured up to what everyone else got to say and do. You know how I had issues with a couple of the previous episodes going too far in trying to illustrate what the theme for that episode was? Yeah, this episode doesn't exactly do that, but it does toe the line. It doesn't go so far as the episode Bushwhacked, as it only really takes time to state the theme once instead of 3 times. Here, the theme is apparently that with the help of friends, you can do anything. Now, that's not a bad message to send to audiences, I guess. It's a little corny, but it's mostly solid. But my question is, why do we even need to have Mal spell out how he and the rest of Serenity defeated Saffron? It's pretty obvious that without Wash restoring partial power to the ship, they likely wouldn't have known that they were heading into a trap. And without Mal's idea of Jane shooting the net from within the ship, they would have known about the trap but been powerless to stop it. It's pretty clear to everyone watching that these guys use teamwork to win, while Saffron, she works solo even though she is partnered with those 2 guys who are in the net. But I digress. Mal doesn't really need to spell out how they won, does he? Once again, I will say if I can spot what the theme of an episode is, it's too obvious and needs to be toned down a notch so that it's not as in your face as it is. This episode doesn't quite focus on Inara and Mal's relationship or the building to what would be a relationship as Shindig does, so it doesn't feel as much like a joke with no punchline like Shindig does. But it does show us that, for sure, Inara does love Mal. I guess you could watch Shindig and think that Inara just liked Mal as a friend, although I doubt anyone actually thought that. But this episode removes all doubt, if there was any. And Inara, usually the straight man of this bunch, even gets a few hysterical lines to come out of this situation that also somewhat furthers the story for us. Although, once again, all of this feels somewhat pointless since we never do get to see the conclusion of the Malnara storyline. Likewise, this episode hints at Shepard Book's past as something other than a preacher. Jane, who nobody would make the mistake of classifying as intelligent, even seems to pick up on Book's knowledge of criminal things that even Mal, Zoe, and Jane do not know about. And this, like the Malnara stuff, feels like it would be more meaningful if we knew what it was leading up to. I have a decent idea, but I don't know for certain. And I'm sure if you're listening to this, you've probably already read the graphic novel called A Shepherd's Tale. I have not, but I will be tackling that book after I've finished watching the series and the movie. So I guess I soon won't be as in the dark on this as I am now. I really do like the emphasis on Mal's character here. This is probably the one episode that gets the most into his head, I would say. Even though he was pretty central to the story in the pilot, the train job, and Shindig, we never really knew much about him. Those episodes were more about learning about his ethical code of honor, which, don't get me wrong, that is about him, but here we learn a specific piece of his past. It's not much, but it does make a lot more sense with what we've seen from Mal. I imagine that the people of Mutant Enemy had quite a bit more of Mal's backstory figured out, but never got around to using it in the series. My creative writing professor in college would tell us to come up with full character bios for anyone in a story, and you will probably only use maybe 20% of it. But what you do use will make the character feel more real to the audience, because you've figured out everything that you're going to use with that character, even if it doesn't show up in the story. And I get the feeling that this is what's going on here with Mal. Overall, I really enjoyed this episode. I find it to be one of the most enjoyable episodes, and also one of the most memorable. I also think it holds up better than some of the other episodes we've seen so far. That's about all I have to say about this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this one as much as I did, and I hope you liked this review. If you did, feel free to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll have more videos throughout the rest of this week. And if I'm lucky, I'll have a review of the next episode of Firefly ready for next week. Until then, have a good day.